Let's talk about boundaries. How do you figure out what your boundaries are? How do you communicate those boundaries without feeling guilty and icky? What to do if someone oversteps your boundaries? This is the video that I wish I'd had several years ago. I was a fully fledged people pleaser. One of the ways to overcome people pleasing is learn to set firm boundaries. The videos and resources that I was coming across were really unsatisfactory. I felt like they were saying, figure out what your boundaries are, set those boundaries, be firm, set consequences. But I was like, okay, but can you give me examples of how to actually say this? Because I consider myself a polite person. When I set those boundaries, I just feel like I'm going to be really rude, and I didn't actually know how to have those conversations. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you loads of examples. In the description box below, I am going to leave a PDF that is absolutely free, which has got examples galore. If we haven't met before, great to have you here. I'm Dr. Sarah. I'm a medical doctor and an online coach, and I help people overcome people pleasing, perfectionism, and procrastination. So you are in the right place, my friend, if any of those apply to you. I always say to my coaching clients that there are 3 steps to boundary setting. The first step is deciding what your boundaries are. The second step is communicating those boundaries, and the third step is reinforcing those boundaries if necessary. So step 1, deciding what your boundaries are. How on earth do you even figure out what your boundaries are? And this is especially difficult as a people pleaser, because as people pleasers, we get into the habit of ignoring our own emotions, ignoring our own needs. If something doesn't feel quite right to us, that might be a sign that someone's overstepping a boundary, we often just push that down and try and make sure that everyone else is okay and forget about our own needs. Deciding what our boundaries are means really tuning in and listening to your own emotions. So one of the ways to go about this is to journal, and this is something that was absolutely instrumental for me in figuring out my own boundaries and overcoming people pleasing. When I say tune into your emotions, what do I mean by this? If, for example, a particular situation makes you feel a bit angry or a bit resentful, your natural inclination might be to feel guilty about having that emotion and to push it away and just do everything to make everyone else happy. But if you're going to learn to overcome people pleasing and set those boundaries, you need to be able to listen to the clues that you're getting from those emotions. So if you start feeling resentful or irritated or annoyed or upset about something, write down why you think you might be feeling that way. Get to the root of the issue, because those negative emotions are clues that you may need some firmer boundaries in your life and where those boundaries should lie. People pleasers are often over givers, so we give and give and give to the point that we don't have anything left. We're pouring from an empty cup. Now, I like to say that if you can give from a place of just being completely generous and feeling totally fine about it, that's the sweet spot. We want to be able to carry on giving because we're often generous, kind people. It makes us happy to make other people happy. If you get to a point where you're giving and you start feeling like a martyr, or you're feeling like there's an expectation behind your giving, that is also another clue as to where a boundary may need to lie, either with yourself or with other people. Step 2, now this is probably the more difficult phase of setting boundaries, and that is communicating your boundaries. This is the point that I want you to remember, that you don't have control over how other people behave and how other people act, but what you do have control over is what you accept from other people. It's your responsibility to decide what you will and won't accept. And at this point, I can hear you all screaming through the screen, I don't like confrontation, I don't want to be in conflict with other people. Now listen, if you're someone who hasn't got strong boundaries in your life, I can guess that you're probably quite a polite person, probably quite kind. You don't like that confrontation and conflict, totally fine. You have probably been quite passive in your life up to now. If you think about it in terms of passive, assertive, and aggressive, if you are coming at life from a passive standpoint, when you start being assertive and communicating your needs clearly, it feels aggressive. It's not, but it feels aggressive because you're going up a notch. So I just want you to remember, when it comes to communicating your boundaries, be brave. You have to be direct. You have to actually say what you really mean. And you have to make the decision about whether you want to tolerate the uncomfortable feeling of having a difficult conversation and communicating your boundaries, or deal with the discomfort of having people walk all over you for the rest of your life. You have to choose your battle. And remember that you can totally do this in a cool, calm, and collected manner. It doesn't have to mean conflict. and arguments. You deserve respect. You deserve to have boundaries. You deserve to decide how your time, energy, and resources are spent. You do not have to give those away to everyone else all the time. And you don't have to justify yourself. You might feel like you really want to, because us people pleasers, we want to be understood. We are desperate for approval and permission and validation from other people. Just stand firm in what you're saying and try and let go of that need to seek validation from the other person. Setting boundaries is all about protecting your time, your energy, and your resources, as well as your physical space. It's almost like having a bit of a force field around you. I like to describe it as feeling like you're in a protective snow globe. I'm going to give you some examples. So first of all, physical. I'm looking down because I've got them all written down in front of me. Don't touch me, please. I don't do hugging. Something I like to remember when I'm thinking about boundaries around my time is your urgency is not my emergency. Oh my gosh, this is such a key phrase when you're thinking about how to protect your own time. Don't let other people's urgency around what they want you to do with your time affect you and your peace. Their urgency is not your emergency. Also remember, just because I'm free then doesn't mean I'm available. You do not need to give your time to everybody else. So an example of how to communicate this: no, you can count me out for that. No, I don't feel comfortable doing that. No, I'm not available then. Have a great time. I know you want to hang out and spend time together, but I need some time to myself right now. If you notice yourself getting into conversations that drain your energy or spending time with people that are draining your energy, here are some examples of how to communicate those boundaries. I'd rather not be part of this conversation. I'm not a fan of people gossiping behind other people's backs, so I'm going to head off. I know you mean well, but I actually don't want advice right now. I'm just looking for some support or sympathy from you. I don't accept people swearing at me. Can we continue this conversation without swearing, or I'll just leave? I really don't appreciate those kind of jokes. Can you please not talk about that around me? I don't like people commenting on my food choices. Can we please talk about something else? My weight and my appearance aren't up for discussion. Can we move the conversation on, please? I really don't want to talk about my career right now. I just need a break from thinking about work. Let's talk about something more interesting, please. It really bothers me when you talk badly about your own body or about other people's bodies. Can we not talk about that together? Thinking about boundaries around your resources, so your belongings, your money. Here are some examples. I have a boundary that I don't lend money. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Okay, and here's an example that I actually set when I was at university, when I had a housemate that kept using my belongings and going through my things, which was so frustrating. And we set a boundary that we don't go in each other's spaces or use each other's belongings without asking. It's really important to me. Okay, so I hope those examples were useful, and I'm going to give you loads more in the PDF that I've linked down in the description box below, which you can get for absolutely free. So the thing to remember that's really important when you're communicating boundaries is to be direct. What you want to do is to try and talk around the subject, say things like, if that's okay with you, or if you really don't mind, or it's okay, making it a soft boundary. But what that implies is that there's wiggle room there. In reality, your boundaries need to be firm for people to actually understand them. Otherwise, you're not really being respectful or fair to the other person. You're assuming that they understand what you mean. You're expecting them to read between the lines of what you're saying. You need to be direct, and you need to say what you actually mean. Like I said, it will feel uncomfortable. You will feel like you're being rude. You cannot control the other person's reaction to you. So it can feel really tempting to let your boundaries down and let those people have what they want from you. That feels like the norm for them, and it feels like the norm for you. If you really want to develop good self-trust, self-respect, confidence in yourself, firm boundary setting is the only way to do this. Those people who are used to benefiting from you having no boundaries are the ones who are going to fight you the hardest. And some people, if you're around toxic people, they may try and manipulate you and make you feel bad so that you will go back to your old ways, letting them walk all over you. I want you to remember that it is okay to be the bad guy in someone else's story. If you're used to people pleasing, this is a really hard lesson to learn. We want so desperately for everybody to like us and for us to feel like we're always the good guy. Promise you, it's okay to be the bad guy in someone else's story sometimes, as long as you have integrity with yourself and you can sleep easy. If you continually allow people to just walk all over you, it's chipping away at your self-respect, it's chipping away at your integrity. You are losing trust with yourself, and that is so much harder to deal with than the difficulty of setting firm boundaries. The third step is reinforcing those boundaries. This comes into play when someone oversteps the mark and does something that for you feels unacceptable. But I always like to say that it's okay to give people the benefit of the doubt once. You have a responsibility to communicate that boundary really clearly. If they overstep that boundary yet again, knowing full well what you meant, that is a total disrespect, and this is where consequences have to come into play. So I'm going to give you an example of a conversation that I actually had when I mentioned about my housemate at uni that kept using my things and going through my stuff. I noticed that my belongings had been moved while I was out. I thought we had a boundary set that we wouldn't touch each other's things. I just wanted to check if that was something we're on the same page about. Is there a reason you moved my things? We have to live together, and I really want us both to feel comfortable in this space. The reason that this is such a good way of having this conversation is it's respectful. I mean, that doesn't feel confrontational. It's a really difficult conversation to have because you're bringing up the fact that you know that they've done something wrong. They know they've done something wrong. That's really hard. However, I still think it's respectful. It's holding them accountable to what they've done in a polite way, but also making sure that the two of you are on the same page. You're saying, is there a reason you moved my things? You're trying to understand what's going on in a non-confrontational way. You just want to make sure that everything's okay with them. You're bringing you guys back together. At this point, if they keep crossing that boundary, this is where you have to have consequences. Most of the time, this means distancing yourself from communication with them, distancing yourself physically with them, reporting them if necessary, cutting them off. These are really difficult decisions that have to be made sometimes. In fact, I actually had a friend in my history, in my early years, that I ended up cutting off because she kept overstepping my boundaries, and I noticed that I was feeling really conflicted when I spent time with her. I was kind of stressing before seeing her, not enjoying my time with her. But a lot of the time I spent with her was spent gossiping and complaining about things. And then afterwards I felt kind of icky. I didn't really feel great after our interactions, and I communicated some boundaries with her, and she continually overstepped those boundaries, and I eventually ended up cutting off this friend. And it was such a difficult decision to make, but I feel totally in integrity with myself because I know that was the right decision for me, and ultimately we are probably both happier for ending that relationship because she has friends that she can spend time gossiping and complaining with, and I don't want to be part of that. So all in all, it's kinder to both of you in the long run. What are the biggest things that you struggle with when it comes to boundary setting? Let me know down in the comments below, because I know for a fact through my work as a doctor and through my coaching that so many of us are struggling to set these boundaries in our lives. And I want you to know that you're not alone. So just have a look at the comments down below. I'm sure that loads of people are going to be opening up about boundary setting and how difficult it really is in reality. I want you to remember that it is your responsibility to decide how you will allow other people to treat you. If this video about boundaries has triggered something in you that may make you think that perhaps you have some people-pleasing tendencies, then you are going to enjoy this video here where I talk about 7 signs of people-pleasing. Take exquisite care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!